Rescue needed for a medical at Paisley Park, 7A. Person down, not breathing.
That was the 911 dispatcher sending paramedics to Prince's compound the day he died. Now, new details have emerged about that day and the days leading up to Prince's death. The details revealed in a search warrant.
A local doctor, Michael Schlichter, who saw Prince twice in the last few weeks. Those 2 visits, he did conduct some tests, and he showed up here on the morning that Prince was found unresponsive in his elevator to deliver those test results. It doesn't look like Prince was doctor shopping. What they're looking at specifically is what is the relationship between this doctor, between Prince, and also his inner circle.
And tonight, the feds are on the case. DEA agents investigating Prince's death are looking at the inner circle. Were his closest associates acting as something like a drug runner? Plus, the guy who claims to be Prince's only heir, his rap sheet is extensive and bad. Joining me, Kurt Schlichter, attorney, author of Conservative Insurgency, Yodit Tewolde, attorney and Kyung Law, CNN correspondent, live at Prince's estate at Paisley Park. Kyung, the name Kirk Johnson came up in the affidavit. Tell us what you can about him.
What we've been able to learn about him is that he's well known in this community. He's lived here for decades. That's how long he's known Prince. He is a performer. He's a dancer. He's a personal trainer. He lists on his LinkedIn, though, that he is the Paisley Park estate manager. He also was a drummer in Prince's band. We know his name because his name was listed on the search warrant. And on that search warrant, the detective writes that she interviewed him and that he told her that Prince did make a hospital run. It was sometime in 2014 or 2015. It appears quite vague in that conversation he had with the detective, and that Prince, when he went to the hospital, did receive fluids. We did reach out to Johnson's attorney. He has hired a criminal defense attorney. That attorney did not respond to our request for comment. Drew?
Thank you, Kyung. As Kyung is saying, there was a hospitalization 2014 and 15. Treatment with fluids. You may have heard Prince was hospitalized for dehydration. That is nonsense. Who doesn't go to the emergency room and get an IV hooked up to them? What 50-year-old man gets dehydration? It just doesn't happen unless there's some chronic, severe medical problem. Now, he also reported that an unidentified man was picked up, a man in his 50s, at Paisley Park, taken to a medical center. That according to 911 call logs. And again, dehydration, exhaustion. If you hear those kinds of words in the media, if somebody's under the age of 80, discount it. It's not. It's just some sort of spin. Now, Kyung, when do we expect the toxicology report?
Well, you know, Drew, from having viewed them yourself, it takes quite some time, especially when you're looking at what kind of medications that the person may have been on. When Prince first died, when all of this broke, and this happened exactly 3 weeks ago from today, when all of this happened, what we heard was the medical examiner, the spokeswoman, saying that this would take weeks, if not longer, at least a month, she said. Well, next week is a month, but again, those toxicology reports, they are detailed. The sheriff himself said that they were going to take their time. They wanted to make sure everything was done correctly. Yeah,
Kyung, that's what I thought. I heard the same report, and I thank you for confirming that. I'm saying 8 weeks. It's going to be 8 weeks before we hear those reports. Thank you, Kyung. On the phone, I've got Brian Todd, CNN correspondent. Now, Brian, you've been investigating that inner circle as well. I understand that there's evidence that there may have actually been a third physician involved. That is to say, there's the Schulenberg, right, the guy locally there. There's Kornberg, who was the addiction specialist, so-called, from Northern California, and now maybe a third?
That's right, Drew. Investigators are now looking at the so-called, I guess, triumvirate of doctors who may have been involved in this. Let's first get to Michael Schulenberg. He's a doctor, a family practitioner in the Minneapolis area. Investigators want to know more about the relationship between Dr. Schulenberg and Prince because there is a search warrant that was obtained by the LA Times and the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, which reveals that this Dr. Schulenberg did go to Paisley Park both on April 7th and on April 21st. That's the day that Prince died. He went to Paisley Park apparently to deliver test results. Investigators want to know more about the relationship between Schulenberg and Prince. And they also want to know whether any members of Prince's inner circle might have been part of that relationship. What's interesting to note here is that Dr. Schulenberg, again, we said he's a family practice specialist. he is not on the list of FDA-approved doctors who can prescribe that drug buprenorphine, which is said to curb cravings for some opioids. So there is.
Well, Brian, I'm going to interrupt you. I was just saying that the reason that drug has become an issue is that what is allegedly was in the backpack of Kornberg's son, having been brought from Northern California, which to me, I suspect that the certified doctor was going to somehow instruct the non-certified doctor with a license in Minnesota how to administer this, which is a bizarre and really problematic sort of relationship. I'm going to go to Kurt Schlichter really quick. Kurt, you agree with me on that?
Oh, you're absolutely right, Dr. Drew. These guys, if these doctors haven't lawyered up with a criminal defense lawyer, they at least ought to go talk to a civil lawyer and a lawyer who practices in front of the medical board. These guys are in trouble. Everything looks hinky about this. And Dr. Drew, you know, because you've dealt with celebrities, there are a lot of doctors who don't deal with celebrities all the time and don't get used to saying no.
Right. Well said. I mean, that's exactly it. Whenever doctors are making special deliveries, creating special hours, charging special amounts, and it's somebody who's using substances, you are in big trouble when you start violating those boundaries.
Yeah, when's the last time your doctor rolled up to your house and said, hey, I'm here with your test results?
Right.
That doesn't happen.
That's right.
You know, I think there's a little element of being starstruck, and that's when, as a professional, you have to take a step back and say, wait a minute, am I treating a patient or am I treating my own ego? Right.
That's exactly right. Brian, I'm going to go back to you very quickly. Two things. We are hearing the term drug runner. Why does that term keep coming up, number one? And number two, I don't think I heard you tell me who the third physician allegedly is.
That's right. First, we'll talk about that third physician, Drew. The third physician has not been named. That is someone who apparently Dr. Howard Kornfeld was trying to get in touch with, and to try to see Prince in the hours before his death in an emergency situation. This doctor, who's not been named, cleared his schedule, but that appointment, that rendezvous with Prince to treat him, apparently, never happened. So that's the three doctors, the unnamed doctor, then you have this Dr. Schlichter, and then Dr. Howard Kornfeld, the pain addiction specialist, who was called kind of in a panic on the night before Prince died. And again, this Dr. Kornfeld sent his son, Andrew, who is not a doctor, with some buprenorphine to Minneapolis. Was Andrew going to give it to this other doctor? How was Dr. Schlichter involved? That is really subject of the investigation. That's what investigators are really digging into tonight. Now, on the drug runner situation, yes, investigators are focused on the possibility that so-called drug runners, possibly people in Prince's inner circle, were obtaining medications for him. You know, drug runners in the law enforcement parlance are people who basically act on behalf of others, maybe get prescribed medications in their own name and then give it to a person, very often a celebrity. So they're looking at into whether maybe
diverting drugs.
Diverting, right. So there may be drug runners within Prince's inner circle or someone else who may have tried to obtain the drugs for him.
Thank you, Brian. Yodit, if you are Kirk Johnson, going back to the guy we were talking about at the very beginning, if you were representing him, he's your client, everyone's lawyered up in that at Paisley Park, it seems like, and I guess appropriately. What are you telling him to do?
You know, at this point, I don't think he has a defense. I mean, think about it. When you are a Prince, when you are a celebrity such as Prince, and you have that kind of clout, you know, it starts to mess with people's, you know, morals. It starts to mess with people and what they're supposed to do as professionals. And these doctors who can't, you know, so to speak, say no to this Prince who is godly, so to speak, they're in trouble. And like Kurt said, they're going to have to lawyer up. It's a problem. At this point, I'd say nothing. I'd admit to nothing. I'd only talk to your lawyer and keep it as calm as you can, because at this point they are in trouble. Because at some point when these autopsy results come out, and if there is something that is illegal that's been done, then there's going to have to be someone who's going to answer for this whole thing. Because I mean, how did he get these drugs? How did he get this in his system? So, you know, it's going to be very sticky for these doctors.
All right, next up, the prison inmate. He is a prison inmate. He is claiming to be Prince's son. He has he's a rapper, but he has a rap sheet, and we've got proof. And we will tell you what his crimes were. Still to come, George Zimmerman cashing in on having killed Trayvon Martin. Back after this.